And welcome in to DNVR Fantasy. My man, Justin Michael, Kale Sorbo behind the booth. I am Andre Simone. Week 2 almost in the books. Of course, we've got a little NFC North bout. This is one of those games, Lions-Packers, that the NFL has been playing like damn near 100 years. You love that. And yeah, how are you feeling? How was your fantasy week?
I had a great redemption week. So I came into this season thinking, I love my team. This is one of the better teams I've drafted in 5-6 years. I'm good. They completely crapped the bed last week. I got the lowest point total in the entire league. I followed it up in week 2 with the highest point total of any league. And I still got Aaron Rodgers to play tonight. So I've really had a good week. And I got to credit my main man, King Derrick Henry, who we'll get into here in just a second, but 3 touchdowns really carried my team.
Yeah, that's early on finding some nice matchups on defenses to fade.
Oh, totally.
And you want to start anyone against the Seahawks, certainly Derrick Henry. Let's get into that, though. Redemption week, as you mentioned it, and it's redemption hour. There, look at that. That graphic is
chef's kiss.
Yeah, truly. What more could you ask from that? So you proposed this, and there are several people who we might have been ready to overreact on after week 1 who may be kind of coming back, regressing back to the mean. And in this case, that regression, a positive thing because it means them performing closer to expectations in week 2. So kind of a stock watch or assessment of sorts with some of these guys. Obviously, Derrick Henry is one of those players you would start with. Who else do you have on your radar here?
I mean, I think there's a couple of Tennessee Titans you could look at when we're talking about this conversation. That Titans offense really underwhelmed week 1. Titans offense that all 3 of us were pretty dang high on coming into the season. Tannehill, he has a nice redemption game at Seattle. Julio Jones as well, the guy that you had as one of your top 10 wide receivers. Yeah. Was it a, Julio 30-point day? No, but it was exactly what you're expecting and kind of hoping that he could be, which is just a really solid wide receiver 2 option.
Yeah, I thought that was good. A.J. Brown certainly kills it. I mean, that whole offense felt really, really good. And I mean, you needed that. You needed these kind of big games.
Well, these were probably people you drafted pretty high. I mean, Derrick Henry, I would imagine is a top 5 pick
Henry
in most
for
leagues.
Sure.
A.J. Brown is probably going in the first couple of rounds. Like Tannehill might have been an early quarterback taken depending on how high you had him ranked. Like these are guys that you're going to have to count on. It was good to see them. I mean, there were a bunch of teams this week that I was pleased to see. I mean, as a Matt Ryan owner, it was nice to see Atlanta's offense get back together and get Kyle Pitts involved a little bit. He had a catch in that game that was thrown behind him, and he just kind of snagged it while he's running and brings it in, and you just see the freakish ability that dude has, and it's just good to see. It was a good reminder that you can't overreact too much to week 1. I do it every single year when it comes to fantasy, when it comes to pick'em. You said it on the tailgate. There's not going to be a million 2-0 teams. There's only 2 in the AFC, the Broncos and the Raiders.
Right.
Things are starting to even out.
Yeah, it's really true. How about Austin Eckler? Great week from him.
Stud. I mean, you're still worried, how healthy is he going to be long term? I mean, that's just the Chargers in general. I think if you're a Keenan Allen owner, you're probably walking on pins and needles at any point. But it was good to see Eckler and get involved because he's a guy that should be really effective, especially in PPR leagues.
Absolutely. Another PPR favorite, James White. He showed a little more. I'm not sure that's redemption hour, though. I think that's this is what Belichick's been doing with his backfield for 5 years now, where it's James White might be worth starting 3 times a year in a PPR. Good luck figuring out what those 3 are, right? Unless you're Josh McDaniels and you're actually calling the plays, you're going to have a hell of a time figuring out when they go to him or when is it going to be Rex Burkhead that gets me 2 garbage Harris, touchdowns, right? And Damon Harris, one of the better, he's been a stud so far.
He's so good, man. Bill Belichick really relying on those Alabama ties of these last couple of years. I mean, Barmore and Mac Jones, obviously, and they just know how to get good players. It feels kind of personal for Belichick right now after Brady went down and won the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay. But yeah, just a lot of good redemption stories this week. A couple of them in Denver too. I mean, I think you could look at Cortland Sutton. I don't know if you hold week 1 against him, especially because he was a little bit limited with his targets, and I know they're kind of trying to ease him back in. He looked like the wide receiver 1 that you want to lock down to a contract extension.
My question for you guys is, fantasy-wise, how do we feel about him moving forward for the whole season, especially when Judy gets back? Is he a guy maybe you try and go trade for if you don't have him because you know he's going to, 9 for 159, just absurd.
It's worth
how to
into.
treat him? Do you, because you don't want to overreact to one game either.
Also a good point.
I think I'm a believer, though.
I'm a believer.
I think that Judy Patrick, he's the number one. He's going to get those long bombs. Now, with all wide receivers who really feast on long bombs, we've been saying this about guys like Will Fuller, Tyreek Hill for years. Obviously, slightly different caliber to some extent. Tyreek Hill, I'd say.
There's going to be some boomer bust weeks.
There's some big boomer bust because some weeks you're just going to break a couple and go off. In other weeks, it's, you couldn't quite get that connection on a couple deep ones, and your production suffers from it.
Well, and we know that Pat Shurmur is going to want to rely on that run game, which we haven't really seen them get going, at the effective rate in which they want to. Yeah. I know the rushing numbers were okay in week 1, but they were pretty dramatically skewed by that Melvin Gordon long touchdown run. Mm-hmm. I mean, in Denver's defense, and I think Vic Fangio brought this up today, they've gone against a lot of stacked fronts. Like, teams know they want to run the football, and that's going to change what you do, but it just feels like they're going to get Cortland the football because he's their best target down the field.
Yeah. So here's the thing. If you drafted Cortland Sutton,
you're feeling good.
You were on the fence, and that week just made you feel really, really good because he's
had a great week for me.
Yeah, probably better than what you anticipated or expected 2 weeks into the NFL season.
I mean, I am a little worried. He looked pretty gimpy at times in that game, and obviously you got to worry, is that going to be a recurring thing for him? There were times where it didn't seem like he was running extremely well.
Yep.
But he grinded it out, and I think that's encouraging to see, at least that he's able to play through certain levels of pain, because there's, certain guys that's just not the case.
I wonder how much teams are really going to give him that extra attention, because he doesn't look like he's running too smooth. The Jags, honestly, it just kind of seemed like he's beaten trail technique on a couple times. It didn't seem like the corners behind him because he's outrunning them. It seems like the corners behind him because that's precisely what he's instructed to do. But when it came time to play the ball, Cortland, as Cortland's known to do, just came down with it.
And you have a quarterback whose specialty is accuracy and putting the football where it needs to be. So that's the other thing. You're not going to be completely reliant on those 20, 30-yard catches, because there's going to be 10-yard out routes. There's going to be some comebacks where Teddy just puts it, and we saw that. Cortland does a great job of fighting for the ball, of using his body to shield off defenders. The dude's just a stud. We've known it his entire career, and it's good to see him come out and put it on board, because I think that's big for any player coming off a major injury. It's just that get your legs under you, and know you can take a hit, know you can make those plays again.
We've kind of done this already in this segment, but let's really get into stonks, guys who have impressed us, who are really just taken off their fantasy value.
I love that graphic so much.
It's phenomenal. And I wanted to start this without talking specifically about one player, but more of a whole offense. Yeah. I'm somewhat obsessed with the Los Angeles Rams right now.
Oh, let's get into it. Let's do this.
How they're looking with Matthew Stafford. Two kind of sneaky, very solid wins against the Colts and Bears to start off the year. Stanford, again, just looking lights out. And so who are we buying? Sony Michel's kind of a hot pickup right now on the waiver wire. Everyone's going gaga over Cooper Kupp.
As they should.
Cooper Kupp was like wide receiver 13 in drafts this year, which is just insane. He's been this good for forever. Even if you look back on that 2018 year when they had all three of those wide receivers and people were just putting up stats, people viewed him as a slot because that's where he was playing, but he's proving he can play all over the field, especially now that he's got a quarterback that can get him there with his arm. And what's really interesting about this Rams offense that I think why you should be starting all of them if they're on your team right now is, unlike the last couple years, this is a very similar offense to 2017 and 2018 when they were playing the same personnel nearly 100% of snaps. Yeah. Higbee and Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are going to be on the field the entire game. Start all of them.
Everything comes off their 11 personnel in tight. That's what they can run off of because, again, the wide receivers are in tight, so you have blockers, and it really helps them because in tight, you've got more room to operate to the sideline, and a big arm that can stretch it past the numbers like Stafford, really thriving in that kind of offense. So they have me intrigued. Another offense that's really exploded is, and now, Justin, we were high on Stafford coming into the year.
Yeah,
we kind of had him in a
his bag
tier,
now, right? Like we kind of figured, and this is the thing that I'd heard on a couple of national talking points from people that had been in conversation with the Rams personnel. You know, McVay, Kyle Shanahan, they all come from that LaFleur. They're all, the up-and-comers, and I think people have really been raving over, Shanahan and what he does from an innovative perspective.
Yeah.
And I think McVay is kind of like, you want to know what? I'm the one that started all this. I haven't had a guy, and now I'm just unleashing it. And you have a quarterback that's perfect for the system. He's a big arm. He's been effective in play action his entire career, going all the way back to his days at Georgia. This is what Stafford wants to do. They want to lean on the run game, and he wants to stretch the field. They got the guys for it. And as far as Cooper Kupp goes, he's always been a guy that was getting heavy targets, but he now has a guy that's going to be able to get him some touchdowns. That was the thing about Cooper Kupp that was kind of frustrating from a fantasy perspective, just as a guy that had owned him a couple of times over the last couple of years. He was going to get 6-7 catches a game. That was great. He wasn't scoring a ton of touchdowns. I think he could be a sneaky candidate to lead the league in touchdown receptions this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a great call. So I'd be really high on those guys. I am ready to overreact on a lot of that team. The backfield's kind of tricky, but again, Darrell Henderson you already own if you have him, and
where are you guys at with Van Jefferson? Because he's a little bit more boomer bust, but he's just one of those dudes where, if you're really desperate for a flex option or wide receiver 3, maybe depending on what type of format you're playing in, I mean, you've always got the potential for that dude to go for a 60-yard TD.
I like him if you're in at least a 10-person league and you maybe need a flex play. Yeah, if you're in an 8-person, if you're in a 6 or 8-person league, avoid him.
Yeah, you're probably stretching.
There's no need to. You're stretching and starting someone you shouldn't. But if you need a good flex option, especially with how these running back injuries are already piling up, I think that's not a horrible play.
Yeah, and I'm huge on Van Jefferson in dynasty leagues. I kind of think that could be a nice buy low candidate. Again, they're in 11 personnel 24/7, and he's that consolidated third guy. So, let's see more. But it is interesting how Stafford's never really hammered away at that slot guy. Tate would do some stuff out of the slot.
A little bit in Detroit. But yeah, he's definitely been an outside. He's
always been a hammer the outside guys. Yeah. Even Ebron never quite got it going. So Higbee isn't really produced. So
when he plays a short game, it's usually more screens or dump offs to tight ends on the outside. Oh. He's not playing tight within the numbers very often, which it's just not his game.
That's what was really weird going back to when they drafted Hawkinson as high as they did. I liked his talent. It was just one of those where I was like, Stafford's not going to use him. And he didn't really in his one season with him, but yeah, I'm super high on this Rams offense. Another offense in the NFC West that I think all of us are stoked about is Arizona.
Yeah.
I mean, Cliff Kingsbury, people are maybe a little too high on him at times, I think. There are some things he does that just kind of confuse me, but
yeah, people go off labels. Like if you watch his offense last year, it was way too conservative.
I heard a really interesting description of their offense where it's just the most extreme version of pickup football ever, where there really isn't a plan other than our dudes are more athletic than yours. But it's working great. The other thing I want to mention about this weekend before we talk way too long about the Cardinals is if you have a player that's playing against the Vikings, just spam that. That defense is going to give up points.
It's not bad advice.
Never play a Vikings kicker, ever.
To your point about Kingsbury, though, now they actually have that speed. And so Kirk goes off week 1. Rondale goes off week 2. Now,
it was a bit of a broken play on that touchdown.
bit. I'm not sure that's exactly replicable, but I do think this offense is showing you that fantasy-wide, again, in deeper leagues, it's an offense that can carry 3 fantasy starters, potentially 4 at wide receiver.
Depending on what AJ Green does, like
they're
going to have a lot of different options. But Kyler especially, what's up, Brad Montgomery?
Yeah.
Shout out to everybody in the chat. Zach Castro as well, been very active.
Yeah.
Arizona, though, and if we're talking about teams that are just fun to watch, I think you could throw the Rams in that conversation as well. Is there anybody that, other than maybe Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray is like the most electric thing going in the NFL right now. He's scrambling around. He's jumping forward, jumping back, throwing downfield.
It's kind of underrated, honestly, how
it's totally
entertaining
underrated.
he's been. Yeah. And like him and Dak is going to be a really fascinating fantasy conversation.
Well,
or him and Herbert. I already think his value in fantasy exceeds Herbert's.
I can tell you right now, I regret not taking Kyler over Aaron Rodgers. What I did last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. No, and that back to Stafford. Stafford's another guy. We were high on him, but we kind of saw him in that tier with like Matt Ryan Tannehill, and Jalen Hurts. He's
like above that. He's like top 5 fantasy QB territory. He's up there with Lamar and Kyler and Dak and Mahomes. Like he's in for a mass as long as he stays healthy. And you can say that about anyone.
Right.
With a guy that's as dependent on improvisation and running around, like that's always going to be a factor. But what we're seeing with these young mobile quarterbacks, Lamar and Kyler, they're so elusive. They're so evasive in the open field. You can't really get a clean shot on them. It's not like RG3 who is out there just getting the living hell beat out of them. They know how to get down, and I just think that's the big difference between these modern mobile quarterbacks is they've learned how to take advantage of the rules when they're in the pocket. When they're in the open field, it's hard to hit them. Like, good luck opposing defenses.
Well, it's
good
like
luck.
that Justin Simmons flag on Daniel Jones week 1.
Totally.
That's how the game's changed.
Is it a good time to get into conversation about another quarterback?
Another stonk that's appreciating right now?
Another stonk that's appreciating?
Yeah.
Is it time to maybe try and go get Justin Fields because of that rushing floor?
Yeah, Fields is going to be a really interesting conversation in a Matt Nagy offense. You got to be intrigued by that. I thought you were going to go Derek Carr, who's already owned in a lot of leagues, but showing more aggression. That's leading to more fantasy production and actually led to a really nice week.
The whole Raiders offense stonks are up.
Stonks are up. I mean, these are 3 2-0 teams, and stonks are up across the board. Carr's an interesting one, though. Carr's a really interesting one, but I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting you to take that angle.
Well, I was just...
Bridgewater would be another one.
Yeah, well, we haven't gotten to waivers yet. That's what Justin Fields is owned in most leagues, which is why I was a little...
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about this Bears system. All offseason, I wanted to know, are they going to play Justin Fields or are they going to go Andy Dalton? That's not creative. Everybody, same question. But the Bears, their first 2 games, I was listening to one of I think it was a Ringer podcast, a national, and they were talking about how in terms of like points allowed by the quarterback, their like first 3 games were against some of the top defenses from last year, 3 or 4. And then it was really going to even out after that. And because of that, I do think now is probably the time where the next week or 2, you got to imagine they're going to Justin Fields. Like, now's the time. I imagine he's already bought up, like Kale said, in most leagues, but now's the time.
Now's the time. If there was ever a week to pick him up, this would be the week. And you never know. Check it out. Check out DraftKings Sportsbook, the number 1 sportsbook in all the land. You want to take some advice from this show, for example, take an over on any quarterback passing yards anytime they play the Minnesota Vikings. That's a JM special straight for you. Other thing they're doing is they're giving you cards when you signed up, and like Derek Carr went over a certain total. Week 2, Kyler Murray went over a certain total. I got a free $10 here, free $10 there, all thanks to the good folks at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's the best. You've got same-game parlays. They've got odds boosts, great offers left and right every single day. And then if you're a fantasy player, they are the leader in daily fantasy as well. So go check them out. Download that DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use that code DNVR when you receive. And that'll allow you to get a deposit bonus matched up to $1,000. Also, a new offer right now where you place $1 to win $200 on any NFL market. It's just the best. Use that code DNVR and check them out. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. Any stonks I'm missing, or shall we go straight to waiver wire pickup? Week 1, aside from Elijah Mitchell, who we mentioned, and that ship sailed.
But before we get into this, just real quick, since we're on the topic of DraftKings, make sure you guys are listening to DNVR Bets every day. My man Dre has been on a heater. We've got all kinds of RK. Well, I mean,
the dogs go to heaven parlay is hit 2 weeks in a row. Just saying.
I turned $2 into $200 with college football this weekend, so DraftKings Sportsbook definitely popping, definitely the way to be.
Lots of good knowledge here. Yes.
Lots of good knowledge. Real knowledge, not N for knowledge like Nebraska.
Stonks-wise, anything else?
Teddy Bridgewater.
All the homies in the chat
yeah,
also making money.
Tim Patrick.
Yeah, we'll hit both of those in waiver pickups because I think the Broncos are in general there. But stonks up just in general on AFC West offenses. I'm kind of in on all of them. Even though the Chargers had a tough week, I think Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, and Justin Herbert are going to be really, really solid fantasy plays.
Is it weird to me to say I'm a little, especially because they had a great game last night, even though they lost, I'm a little bit less high on the Chiefs offense right now outside of Mahomes, just because, and I mean, if you have Kelsey, obviously that he's pretty much good for a touchdown a week, but
the lack of depth at wide receiver is going to impact them.
I mean, we saw Baltimore completely take away Tyreek in that game, and that's going to happen more than once this year.
And that's a great zone coverage team that's bracketing one guy, and because they're so good in zone coverage and picking up the middle of the field, they're as good as anyone in covering Kelsey.
And he still got a touchdown.
Right. And now outside, though, instead of Sammy Watkins, you're dealing with Mecole Hardman, Pringle. So, it's a step down. And also the continuity on the offensive line. The first 2 years for Mahomes, the O-line didn't have, like, studs or...
But it was the same.
So much continuity.
Until the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And that's when everything fell apart for that team.
So that's an interesting one. Stonks, though, yeah, I think that's well covered. Let's get into the waiver wires here because I've got some teams of mine that need some work, and so I'm going to get to this.
I need a running back, man. I don't know if you get this. I'm putting you on the spot here. But.
Well, Cordarrelle Patterson. That's, if you can get him at running back after his showing against the Buccaneers this week, kind of seemed like a blowout for a minute, then Cordarrelle does some stuff. Russell Gage was kind of the hot name coming into the season, replacing those Julio touches. Cordarrelle has really been the guy.
One. That was the weird thing, and that was a guy that I think I told you to play him even week 1, so I felt bad about that one. But
no, he's been a huge pickup, and I mean he's probably owned in just about every league. But if he's still available, Tony Pollard is a huge pickup.
That's a great one.
Because I mean Zeke has struggled, but I really don't think that's happening. Now, after that, it gets a lot trickier because there might be people who already own Justin Fields in your league. And also, I wouldn't go after Justin Fields. Yes, there's the run value.
It's more like a backup a stash type situation, see if he booms.
But honestly, I bet you can find Derek Carr available. I bet you can find Daniel Jones, who's going to have you similar impact as a runner. That's a good point. I bet you Kirk Cousins still available in a lot of leagues like
Kirk Cousins has like 60 points in 2 weeks. As bad as that Minnesota defense is,
they've gone off
offensively, and we don't know what's going to happen with Dalvin Cook. Hopefully he's okay. That was a scary moment when he went off in that one, but
they're huge scoring games. Now, what about Teddy Bridgewater, for example, or Tim Patrick?
I'm all in on both of these guys. Teddy right now, check down Teddy, as he has been labeled. Right now leads the NFL in pass attempts over 20 yards downfield. Again,
it's a wild
some of that
stat.
might be skewed a little bit because they haven't run the ball as effectively as they wanted to, and that's going to change a little bit as the season goes on. But we're seeing a Denver passing offense that's probably the most competent outside of that small stretch with Drew Lock, that 4-game stretch under Rich Scangarello. This is probably the best since Denver in 2014.
Right.
Definitely. Tim Patrick's probably going to catch like 6 or 7 touchdown passes this year, and that alone should...
He's a free agent in both my
he's
leagues,
a free agent.
I don't need a receiver, and I might just add him anyways just because of the value.
And Teddy, I would pick Teddy up too. I think both of them... before the season, and this is me saying I'm wrong, before the season I said avoid the Broncos offense. I'm not saying that anymore, and both of these guys are available in a lot of leagues.
Now, I will ask you, are either of you hesitant a little bit just about the fact that they haven't played great teams? I do think the Giants' defense is decent. I don't think that's a bad showing on the road.
They are good.
They're good.
That's a legitimately talented defense that spent a lot on its secondary and has 2 bona fide studs on the line.
And games in Florida always feel a little weird to me. They're all 11 a.m. kickoff. It's muggy. Jacksonville, a weird atmosphere.
There was rain for about a third of the game this time. I feel really good about this offense moving forward just because
there's a lot of depth that surrounds it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of...
Well, we don't know when Judy's going to be 100% either. Even when he comes back, a lower body injury with somebody as explosive as he is, that's so dependent on the line of scrimmage movement, quick lateral cuts, like an ankle injury is a little bit worrisome.
Yeah.
We're getting one in here from our guy, Zach. He's saying Diami Brown. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, he's a guy who's getting a lot of targets deep. Heineke seemed to be going after him. I think at wide receiver, if still available... and from what I'm seeing, he's available in like 45% of leagues on ESPN as Sterling Shepard. Should be one of the first wide receivers you're targeting. He's getting a lot of touches over the middle. There's a lot of Kenneth Gainwell love, the running back out of Memphis for the Eagles.
Leonard Fournette's available in a lot of leagues too. He's starting to catch some passes. If you're desperate, I wouldn't go there unless you have to, but there's a lot of, if you need a running back, he's going to make some catches. He's probably got a floor of 7 or 8 fantasy points, which is good for you.
If you're desperate,
yeah.
And you'll have a good like Rondale, Christian Kirk debate. I think Kirk's probably going to be owned in most leagues. Rondale shouldn't be. Henry Ruggs, another guy who went off this week. Similar to Rondale, right? Like more of a feast or famine, big play guy.
Any of those big speed guys, it's going to be a boomer bust type situation.
If you're in a PPR, you got to go aggressively after Sterling Shepard if you haven't already gone to get aggressively after Cordarrelle Patterson, and there will be some formats where Patterson's already gone.
What about Latavius Murray in Baltimore? They've lost 2 backs already. I don't love it, but he did get a touchdown in his first game back.
Touchdown?
He's that kind of guy.
We talked about it. He's going to get goal line carries, which you like, but...
He's also going to lose touchdowns because of Lamar Jackson, though.
Exactly, and I'm just avoiding that backfield in general right now because, he was probably their best running back yesterday, but he didn't get the most yards. He ended up with 36 rushing yards last night. I thought he played a good game. He had that touchdown. I don't know. I'm just avoiding the Ravens unless it's Lamar Jackson right now.
Yeah, and we've talked about Sony Michel. That's another kind of desperation play. You hope maybe Darrell Henderson gets hurt and he's like the number 1. Soon enough, James White in PPRs is another kind of desperation play there. Michael Carter or JaMychal Hasty. Now,
I like Michael Carter maybe just because I do think they are going to try and lean on that ground game a little bit more.
They'd have to.
They're coming off of obviously a 4-interception game. I'm not going to overreact to that because Belichick has been just destroying rookie quarterbacks for 22 straight years in New England. But, that Jets offense is just inept. They're going to have to run the football at some point.
Let's hit up some questions before we step out and start to watch some Monday Night Football. Lay it on us, Kale. We got anything good here?
Yeah, what do you all think about Zeke? I'm a Dallas fan, and I'm like, Tony time? Yeah, start Tony over Zeke. If you drafted him as a handcuff, Tony Pollard's the best running back on that team.
Yeah, I think you're lucky that Zeke's still getting some touches and stuff right now and would try to sell. But, I mean,
I'd dump Zeke for anything at this point.
Pollard's exciting when you watch him play. Like, Pollard just has another gear, and we see this in the NFL time and time again. A running back kind of hits his, like, mileage limit, and then that young guy comes in, and it's like he's got another gear, literally. So that's what's happening right now, and it's definitely Tony
Zeke
time.
just looks like he's running in quicksand, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to watch. I really enjoyed watching Zeke early in his career. Loved what he did at Ohio State. And that's saying something, because there are a few programs in the country I despise more than Ohio State, but that's how electric he was. And it's unfortunate, but it's a position where, unfortunately, the longevity just isn't there.
Right. Brad's asking Fournette or CH, a real battle. Go Tigers.
I'd lean Clyde Edwards-Helaire just slightly, but he's a guy that I just haven't been high on. Really,
that
the last
fumble
2 years.
yesterday sucked.
He's just fine. Like, that's the thing is everybody, because he was going into an Andy Reid offense, was really excited about him. I think we've learned he's a league average running back, and that's kind of all he is.
I wonder if there'll be a point where they start to give more touches to the backups, who are have proven to be more.
Damian Williams, who opted out last year, is back on that team, and he's really good within the 5. Like, he's going to get goal line carries.
Super Bowl MVP 2 years ago when they won it, right? Like he played really good in that game and has been reliable in the playoffs. So yeah, I think we just talked ourselves into Fournette.
Yeah, I came in leaning Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I think Fournette's ceiling's probably higher long term.
It's both like potent offenses where the running back doesn't do much, but I probably can count on Fournette getting me a tud a little more than CH.
Especially because in the red zone, Kansas City's so dependent on Kelsey.
Yeah, right. Good point.
All right, let's hit one more.
One more?
What about buying low on Jalen Reagor?
Do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Buy in on the Eagles offense. I like it. I'm in.
And if you can't, Rondale, Henry Ruggs, you've got other options among those feast or famine big play guys. But yes,
if he's a free agent, especially.
We were talking about the wrong Williams. My apologies, but there is the Darrell Williams. Yeah, sorry.
Right. The Damian's the good one. Yep. Right, Darrell Williams, though, guys like that, I think could start
playing really well in the red zone at least, and that's true. So
for a running back in fantasy, that's huge. So, but thank you, Alan, for the correction. I appreciate that. We will be back next week before Monday Night Football to do it all over again. Justin Michael, Kill Sorbo, Andre Simone. Best of luck in your matchups and your waiver wire pickups. Enjoy watching some football this week. We will catch you next Monday.